Okay, thank you, Dr. Guthrie. The first thing I'd like to do is ask you guys a question, and that is, when does the interview process start? Yes?
I would imagine from the first time when you initial contact the company, whether it's a phone call, email, anything like that.
You mean even before perhaps they've accepted your resume?
Yes.
Okay, good answer. Also happens to be correct. Most people would say it starts when you arrive, but it doesn't. Interview preparation starts way before. It starts even before what you said, even before perhaps you contact the company. It starts when you decide what sorts of jobs you're interested in. You begin the preparation for interview. Anticipation and preparation is how you get jobs. Networking also, obviously. But the key to getting a job is to get yourself in the same room with the person who's going to do the hiring. You want to be there. And you're not necessarily going to be there unless you do some things at the beginning that put you there. What is the key to getting an interview? And we're going to exclude networking, which is absolutely vital in job hunting, but let's just exclude it for now. Hey, Joe. What's the, oh, you're in the right class. He's in my other two, too, so he's probably confused there for a second. What's the key to getting an interview? Or you don't know, or you have an opinion? Alexa?
Being able to sell yourself on paper?
Being able to,
Like sell yourself on paper?
like that, you mean the resume?
Yeah.
Yeah. The resume, this is how important the resume is. The resume is the key that unlocks the interview door. Resume is not going to get you a job. But if you don't do a really good, attractive, attention-catching resume with a lot of substance, then you're not going to get an interview. And if you don't get the interview, you don't get the chance to sell yourself. Because above all, a job interview is a sales situation. The people hiring are doing the buying. They want somebody to fill their spot. They want that person to have certain qualities. Your job, is, if you can get into the interview, is to sell yourself to them as the person who has those qualities. And doing the resume, making the resume attractive, putting a lot of work into it, making it aesthetically attractive as well as substantive, is really a critical part of getting the interview. So, but let's say you do get called in for an interview. What do you do then? What do you do then? Sort of sit back and say, okay, I'm just gonna relax. I'm gonna practice remaining calm. What do you do when somebody calls you up and says, Savannah, you've got an interview? I'm not making you answer this. You've got an interview. What do you do? Go.
Practice.
Practice what?
Just some like strategies, tactics.
Strategies to do what?
Just questions that they'll probably ask you and how to best answer.
And how would you know that? Anybody else? Oh, keep nailing him. Yeah.
Research the company.
You research the company, yeah. You definitely want to know what the company's all about. There's very few people that are doing hiring that wouldn't be insulted if you came in and tried to be hired and knew nothing about the company. But there's something much more critical than researching the company when you're doing preparation, when you're anticipating. How do you, Joe said, you try to figure out the things they're going to ask you about. How do you know that? Yes.
I would start like networking with other employees in the company, start trying to figure out what the company's all about, and like understanding the company culture and like what the type of people are that work there.
Okay, if you can get people like that, if you have those connections, you can talk to them, sure, that gives you an inside track to it. But there are a couple of ways. What you have to do is you have to figure out what it is they want. You have to put yourself on the other side of the desk and say, if I were hiring for this job, what qualities would I be searching for? What are the things, the personal and professional qualities that would make the candidate just right? That's what you have to do. You have to figure out what that is, and there are a couple of ways to do it. Number one, you can use your common sense. If you're, for instance, if you were applying for a customer representative job, you might be able to predict pretty accurately what sorts of qualities that would call for. I mean, you're going to need somebody with patience, so they're probably going to ask you about patience and several other things. And this is just you using your common sense. On a very common sense scale, what does this job entail? I have some basic idea of what the job is. Maybe I know a lot about it. So I'm in a good position to try to figure what is it what are the qualities that make someone right for this job? The other way, is, of course, is to go right to the job description. A job description is meant to tell you what it is that the company is looking for. A well-written job description will have that information for you. So, the common sense, the job description, these things, or anybody you can talk to, which is absolutely a great strategy if you're in that position. Those are the things that you do, that you look at to put together a list of the qualities that you think they want. Okay, and once you have that list, what do you do with it? Let's say the list, you put together a list that might be leadership, patience, attention to detail, any of the personal and professional qualities that people look for. I think, did you send them that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in an interviewing thing, you'll see a list of qualities. It's certainly far from exhaustive, but at least it's something to look at. What do you think you should do to prepare yourself for an interview where you have a fairly good idea what qualities they're looking for? You're not going to get them all by prediction, but you're going to get some of them, and maybe a lot of them. And if you do that, then you're going into an interview not blind, but with some sense of what they're interested in. And if you know what they're interested in, then you have time to prepare answers for questions that seek to determine whether you have that quality. When someone asks you a question in an interview, and this is especially true for behavioral interviewing, which we're going to talk about in a minute, the first thing that should go through your mind, I mean in the first second or two, is what are they trying to find out about me by asking me this question? What is it that they're looking for? And that goes through your head instantly. And once you determine, maybe the question is one that's obviously geared to seeing if you have leadership qualities. So the first thing that goes through your head is they're looking for leadership qualities. And then you construct answers based around what you think they're searching for. So you're giving them exactly what they're hoping to hear from you. Now, I want to caution you, you can't lie in an interview. You will get caught. And if you happen to get away with the lie for a while and you get caught later, it's doubly embarrassing. So don't lie, but there's nothing wrong with putting yourself in the best possible light without lying. Explain situations, explain experiences that you've had so that it makes you look good. That's sales, and that's what you're doing. And I don't mean to make it sound insignificant, but the fact is, you are selling yourself. And you have to keep it, you have to approach an interview with that in mind. These people want something. I have to convince them that I have what they want. Okay. Now, nowadays in interviews, really, there's traditional interview questions, which you guys have probably all heard. What's your biggest weakness? All the questions. I mean, and you still hear them, okay? But behavioral interviewing has just swept the field away. There are very few, if any, jobs left that you won't get behavioral questions. What is the difference between a behavioral interview question and a traditional question? Alexa?
Well, in behavioral interview questions, they ask you questions based on past experiences, and the theory is that the best indicator of how you'll act in the future is how you've acted in the past. So it's kind of more of you explaining to who's the interviewer, like an instance where you exemplified leadership, as opposed to them asking you like what a weakness of yours is.
Yeah, exactly. The whole crux of behavioral interviewing is what Alexa said, that the belief that the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. It's also critical that, hopefully, from the interviewer's point of view, you are not familiar with behavioral interviewing techniques. And here's why. Because what they believe, and psychologically they claim to have proof of this, is that if you put somebody on the spot and you ask them for specific examples of some quality, of them using some quality, and they haven't had time to prepare for those questions, they will tend to respond with the truth. That's what behavioral interviewing contends. In fact, as soon as you've been through a couple of behavioral interviewings, you know how it works. So that goes out the window. You can prepare much more comprehensively when you understand what's happening. The behavioral interview is not, it's meant to get the truth from you by surprising you and having you respond with the truth. But once you know that, and you can then prepare examples of you showing these qualities. And again, I'm not recommending that you lie. You will be caught out eventually. But you have time to think about it. If in fact leadership is one of the qualities you're sure they're looking for, then stop and think. In my experience, I need to come up with 2 or 3 examples of me showing the leadership. And be specific. When they ask you a question, behavioral interviews always ask for specific examples. If they say to you, tell me about the last time that you used leadership in a problem-solving situation, they do not want you to explain to them why leadership is important to problem-solving. Anybody can find that out. It's in all the textbooks. What they want to know is, how did you show leadership in a problem-solving situation? So you need to get specific examples. But you can do that if you have prepared adequately enough. If you have stopped and thought to yourself, what are the qualities they're looking for? You come up with 5 or 6, and you have stories ready to go, narratives ready to go that show you using that quality or exhibiting that quality, showing you being a leader. Come up with 3 or 4 and just have them ready. Just have them ready, and then you won't be caught flat-footed. And you'll be able to structure the answer to that question in a way that puts you in the most flattering light. And remember, when you're in an interview situation, you don't owe anybody else anything but yourself. It is not your responsibility to prepare or police the interview process for other people. You're supposed to be doing it to put yourself in the best light. That's your only responsibility. The only reason I mention that is because occasionally you'll get asked what is called an illegal interview question. Actually, it's not called that, it is illegal. You're not allowed to ask these questions. Anybody know an example of an illegal interview question?
It's illegal to ask a woman if she's married or has children.
Absolutely illegal. That's right. Absolutely illegal. You cannot ask that, because the implication of that is, okay, if you're a woman and you're married and you're going to have children, then that is going to take away from your job focus. And that is not a legitimate criteria or criterion to make a decision like that. Another illegal example, but you wouldn't want to say, for instance, well, let's just say the truth is, no, I'm not married. No, I don't have children. No, I'm not planning to have children. If that's the case, and they're asking you questions like that because they think it would be to their benefit to hire somebody like that, then you have every right to say to them, no, I'm not married, even though it's an illegal question. It's not your responsibility to call them out on it. You're not there to protect everyone else in the world. You're there to put yourself in the best light. And if putting yourself in the best light entails answering an illegal question, then answer it. If you want to turn them in later, if you don't get the job, that's your business. But it's for you. It's not for other people. And we're not abdicating our social responsibility here. In this case, you guys are trying to get a job. You are the focus. So do what makes you look best. Another good question is, have you ever been arrested? Is that illegal or legal? Yeah.
I believe it would be illegal unless you've been charged with a felony where you would be required to report that, correct?
That's correct. You can't ask somebody if they've ever been arrested. Why not, do you suppose? I mean, it seems like a question's reasonable. Yeah.
You are presumed innocent until proven guilty. So being arrested would not imply you committed a crime.
Yeah. How many people in here, just curious, have ever been arrested? Just me? The only one? Okay, well, the point here is you can be arrested and be innocent. A lot of people are arrested when they're innocent. So you can't ask if people have ever been arrested, but you can ask if they've ever been convicted of a felony. On the other hand, if somebody asks you that question and you haven't ever been arrested, you may decide that it's to your benefit to simply say, no, I haven't been, because that makes you look better. But if you have ever been arrested and you want to handle that question somehow differently, the answer is to appeal to the idea that it has to be in the interest of the business to ask that question. There has to be a legitimate business interest in asking if you've ever been arrested. So the answer to that is not, you can't ask me that. That's an illegal question. Because all you're doing there is alienating the very people who are going to make the decision about whether you move on in the interview process. You don't confront them. You simply say, well, if you would explain to me why that is important why that is part of your legitimate business interests, and if I can understand that, then I'll answer that question. And then they'll probably say, well, we'll just move on, because they know it's illegal. Okay, so the whole idea here, the point I'm trying to make is put yourself in the best light. Sometimes that means answering an illegal question, then do it. Okay, so you get to the interview and they're asking you the behavioral questions. Anybody know what behavioral, well, we discussed the behavioral questions. Does anybody know the technique for answering a behavioral question? The people who developed this concept is actually a local company called Development Dimensions International, DDI, they're in Bridgeville. And they created this. It's proprietary information, actually. But they have an idea about how you should answer a question. It's the STAR method. Anybody ever heard of the STAR method? Situation, thoughts, action, result. If somebody says to you, give me the last example of a time that you used leadership in a problem-solving situation, if you structure your answer like that, you are going to give them a very clear, compact, circular, complete answer, because it takes them through the whole process. The situation explains to them exactly what the context of the problem was. The thoughts means when I realized I had a problem, what thoughts went through my head? How did I analyze this problem? What options did I see that I might use? That's the thought process. The action process is the actual decision to make one or to take one of the options. And then the result, of course, is how did it turn out? And here's what we determine from each of these things. This is what an HR professional is listening for this. HR professionals are trained in this kind of interview. They know the STAR method. They know behavioral questions are supposed to be getting that information. Once you get past them and you're dealing with the operational people that you might actually be working for, they're going to be less familiar with it, but they still will appreciate the structure of an answer like this. So what do HR people learn? In the situation, they don't really learn anything except the context. They learn what they need to know to understand what comes next, which is the thoughts. In the thoughts, they learn whether or not you are analytical, whether or not you're a problem solver, because you're telling them when you get in the situation, they now know what the problem was, and you explain to them, once they realize this was the problem, here's how I thought about it. Analytical. Once you analyze it, you come up with some possible options, and you make a decision as to what option you're going to choose. It's this, the action, and that tells us that you are decisive. And of course, the result. If it's a good result, that tells us you have good judgment. If it's a bad result, that suggests you have bad judgment. So if you go through this elaborate situation, how you thought about it, your action, and it really is a nice, smooth, organized, reasoned process, but your decision was wrong, that's not good. You want to use examples where the decision was right. You don't want them leaving by saying, wow, very analytical, very decisive, but judgment, I don't know, because he picked the wrong answer. Now, one of the things that you need to be careful about, or no, several of them actually, the situation is a narrative, and it's a story. We're very, very comfortable when we're telling stories. We're very comfortable when we're listening to stories. We've been doing it for 10,000 years. It's a place that we like to be, we enjoy being. So the danger here is you will get caught up in the situation, what's called narrative drift. All of a sudden, the situation takes over your answer, and you never really get to the other things. But the people on the other side of the desk are much more interested in these things than they are in the situation, which doesn't tell them anything about you. That just tells them the situation you're in. They want to learn things about you, and they'll learn that by listening to you describe this part. So be careful that you don't get caught up in it. Tell these people only what they need to know to understand the process that you went through, and no more than that. So narrative drift is the thing you want to be careful about in here. There is a problem also with the thoughts aspect of it. See, when we're in the actual situation, we tend not to verbalize our thinking. We don't verbalize our analysis. We don't think, or we don't say to ourselves, okay, this is here, this is there, this is the situation, these are the options, this is what I ought to do here. No, we don't say these things out loud. It all goes on in our head very quickly. It's the process of problem solving and analyzing, and it goes on in your head. In the actual situation, you're not saying it out loud. So one of the dangers in interviews and in answering behavioral questions is we tend to skip over that step because we didn't talk about it when it actually happened. So we might say, well, there was this one time where I was in charge of this, and I knew that there were conflicts between two of the people that I was working for, so I decided we we're just going to sit down and talk it through until we could work with each other. That may seem on the surface like a good answer, but it isn't, because I haven't learned anything about how you analyze situations. Why did you decide that sitting down and talking was the right step to take? That's what I want to know about you. Are you making sense? Are you analyzing properly? Are you solving problems properly? So be careful not to drift in the narrative, and be careful that you remember to put in the thoughts part. I mean, you can do it in a sentence. Just tell us, here's what I was thinking when I realized I had a problem. Here's how I was thinking about that problem that led me to take this step, which is the action. Okay? And one of the other things, action almost always comes through clearly, because almost all Almost all the time, we have in fact made a decision and taken an action, decided we're going to do it this way and not that way. So no problems with that. What's often forgotten is the results. You can tell if you're doing that when the interviewer consistently is saying to you, well, how did that turn out? Okay, when you start hearing questions like that, they're telling you, you haven't finished yet. I want to know how this turned out. I see the situation you're in. I now understand how you thought it through. I now understand how you made the decision to act as you did. What I don't know yet is, did it work? And I want to know if it works. So always try to remember to put the result into an answer like that. Okay. Anybody want to try a behavioral interview question? And I should tell you right now, you don't learn this on paper. Okay. Me standing up here and saying, okay, here are the steps, you're not going to know it then. This is a practice situation. Until you have practiced answering behavioral interview questions, you're not going to be good at it. But if you do practice it, you will be good at it. And this structure, this STAR structure, is not confined only to behavioral interviewing. You can use this structure to answer any interview question. Let me get this one. I had a couple of examples here where it shows how you could be asked a traditional question and you could turn it into a behavioral answer. Okay, if somebody says to you, how much do you know about this? Your answer could be something on the order of, actually familiar with that. In fact, let me give you an example of the last time that happened. Or, how often have you had to do this? Well, that is something I've had to do frequently. I actually remember when, move into the example. What would you do if? Well, I faced a situation like that very recently, and here's how it happened. So that you're moving all these traditional questions into the STAR structure. And the reason the STAR structure works is because it's a very contained, confined, and focused answer. You are giving them substance, lots of substance, and you're giving them an organized, structured answer that appeals to everyone. They get the feeling that they're listening to you walk them through the whole process, from realizing, from the situation, to realizing that there was a problem, to deciding what to do, and to telling us how it turned out. You see the circular form of that. It appeals to us. So you should practice doing this, and you should use it when you can, even on traditional interview questions. So, having warned you that it's not something that you just pick up instantly, does anybody want to practice and stumble through one of these? I'll be embarrassed if somebody really nails it, since I'm telling everyone you're going to stumble through it, but who knows? Anybody? I got time. You know why you're hesitating is because this is the unknown. You gotta just get up. I need somebody to say, okay, I'll do it. I'm gonna make a fool of myself. I know I'm not gonna do it right, but I'll be a teaching aid. We'll all learn from the mistakes that I make. You ready?
I'll volunteer myself, yes.
Oh, I thought you were gonna volunteer somebody else.
Oh, okay.
Tell me about a time when a supervisor disagreed with your ideas and what you did about it.
More recently, am I interviewing as if I want the job, or am I interviewing honestly?
I'm sorry, there is a difference.
All right, I understand. I mean, I'll be perfectly frank. Yeah, recently I resigned from a position as the creative director at a venue here in town because my ideas were disagreed with on such a level where I felt that my input was not being listened to, and that we would probably be better off, and in fact, the venue would be a safer place had my ideas been taken into account. But because
Okay, let me stop right there, sorry. I'm gonna interrupt you the whole way through, okay? It's gonna be a good example, okay, but it's not one example, is it? It's not an example, it's a series of things. You're not giving me an example of one single thing.
Okay.
You're giving me an example of, well, this kind of stuff happens a lot. Okay, so give me a specific example. That's what they want.
I was told to ignore violence that was taking place in a venue that I was working at, and I chose not to, and as such, I resigned from the venue because I felt that my personal safety and the safety of the patrons was at risk.
Okay. Nice brief situation. You kind of reversed the action and the thoughts about it. You told us what you did before you told us why you thought that through. But
Okay.
there are several things about your answer that are very good. One of them, it was very concise. And you want to be concise in your answer in the sense of giving somebody an answer that isn't drifting to parts that are really irrelevant to it. So you did that really well. But when you're a concise person, you have to be careful that you don't cut yourself off too short. This is an interview is an information gathering situation for both of us. You're trying to read me and figure out what are they looking for. I'm trying to read you and figure out what does this person have to offer. So you need to expand your answers to a certain extent so that I am getting what I need. If you tend to cut them off really short, they're not going to say, wow, what a concise thinker. They're going to say, I really didn't learn very much from him. But if you concisely explain the situation, for an interview question, if you take 45 seconds, a minute and a half, there's nothing wrong with that, especially if it's a nice organized process. Okay, so, all right, so you ended up with the result. What was the result?
I chose to resign and I had no freelance.
That was the action. What was the result?
What do you mean the result?
Well, the action you chose, the action you decided to take was to resign.
Yes.
And you gave us the reasons, okay, but
Oh, I see.
what was the result?
Can I ask a question before I answer
Yeah.
that? The result meaning what they have done, what I have done, how my relationship with the establishment has changed. What exactly should I be specifying?
Well, what was the action that you took? It was to resign.
Correct.
So the result of that action that I would be interested in would be, how did it affect you?
I am now earning a higher wage at a variety of places where I no longer feel concerned for the reason by which I resigned.
All right, so the main result, though, is that whatever was pressuring you to possibly resolve has now been removed. From that point, you can move on to be more successful. Okay? All right. Do you guys see how the structure works? Do another one. Who else was? See, well, that wasn't really that bad, was it? Another one? Another volunteer? Wait, they just must have thought you got raked over the coals there, huh?
I could volunteer, but I have a job, so I don't need to learn this, right? You do.
How about if I give you the question first and then someone can decide whether they want to answer it? Okay. Tell me about the last time that you had to work with someone who was difficult to get along with. Like there's anybody who hasn't ever done that. So for this group. Doesn't have to be, it can be any job. It can be somebody that you were officers with in your sorority or fraternity. Anytime, what I'm interested, remember, I just asked you this. Tell me about the last time that you had to work with someone who was difficult to get along with. Remember what I told you about the first thing that should go through your head is, what is he trying to find out about me by asking this question? So what am I trying to find out by asking that question? I'm sorry?
Conflict resolution.
Okay, yeah, that conflict resolution, that's a very general way of doing it. But in a behavioral interview, people will tend to interpret these things on sort of an interpersonal basis. It'll be more like, how does this guy deal with people that he can't get along with, or people that can't get along with him? Rather than generalizing into a concept like conflict resolution, they would tend to keep it personal. How does he deal with this? So, how can you tell us about anything? You don't have to. I'm not putting anybody on
I'm
the
trying to
spot.
think, like, so I work with the paid news. I serve as managing editor. So we're a daily newspaper. I have to put out paper every single day, constantly working with people who are going to push back because of the balance between school and work. So most recently, our sports editor was having issues with breaking stories online. So I sat down with him to actually figure out what his issue was and why he wasn't able to fulfill his duties in a certain amount of time.
Okay, stop there. This is a great example of someone who just skipped over the analysis step.
Yeah.
You told us what was wrong, and then you said, so I sat down with him. Why? That's what's just going through my head as I'm listening to you as an interviewer. I'm thinking to myself, why did he decide to do that?
Okay.
Why didn't he just fire him? Why didn't he do something? Why didn't he go to his boss and say, hey, this is a problem, you handle it? I want to know how you thought it through.
So I know that he's taking 19 credits this semester as well as another internship. So I kind of thought to myself, how can I work with him better to be able to do his job here better, because he is serving as an employee, he has to fulfill that job. So then I decided to sit down with him and try to figure out how we can better balance his schedule to fulfill our needs of the kid news as well. And now that we have done that, he is doing a lot better, a lot more productive during the day. That's freed up a lot more time for work with us.
Okay, that was good the way you reached to the result too. I didn't have to say, well, how'd it turn out? One of the things that you might want to put into that thought process is, would you say that when you were thinking about that, remember, you're thinking this, you're not saying it, it's going through your head at that moment.
Yeah.
Would you say that you're thinking something like, in times of conflict like this, I find that it's probably better to do compromise and accommodation, that seems to get you farther, and therefore I decided to do this. Well, that's telling me something interesting about it. I now know how I can expect you to deal with conflict on the job. And the answer is by compromising and accommodating. And that's a pretty positive thought to leave me with. Okay, so that's a good answer. Anybody else? We'll do one more, and then I'm going to ask you if you have specific questions about it. And any interviewing, not just behavioral interviewing. Somebody with experience.
I can answer that on how I dealt with somebody that I had conflict with.
No, that's not. Oh, okay.
I can
Go ahead, do that one.
Sure. I was developing a project here on campus with someone who will not be named. And it wasn't in our department. And I had been asked to work with this person because they had a great deal of knowledge and experience that I did not have, and they thought we would work together well with our experience field. However, we got along like oil and water. We just did not communicate well. We were saying the same things with different enough words where we were constantly misunderstanding each other. But I had a semester-long project to do with this person. I valued their area of expertise because it's completely different from mine, and I'd been told from on high that this was the only person to work with. So I wanted to repair the relationship, talk to them about how we could work better together as things went through. And I value collaboration and compromise. So I took her aside and I said, we are not working well together. I think we are not communicating well. How can we communicate better so that we can have a great relationship moving forward with this progress and this project? And she admitted that she felt the exact same way, but hadn't wanted to say anything. And we hashed it out. It was nice to get to air out the way we were feeling. And we got along a lot better for the rest of the semester, and the project went off really well.
Is that a good answer? Kind of did all the things we were looking for, right? And it leaves you with this sense of truly understanding what she wanted you to understand. So, well done, Bob. I'm glad you said her. I was worried it was me. Okay. All right. I have something I'm going to hand out to you, but before we do that, about do you guys have any specific questions about anything like? Oh, go ahead.
I have
You
a
ready?
question. So like you don't, I don't know, going for like a first interview, you don't really have a lot of experience in the actual work field. Could you use like a smaller, like, you know, maybe like a roommate example of conflict where like, you know, you kind of, would that be also just kind of something like that? It doesn't have to be like a specific work example, I guess?
No, it doesn't. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, they will expect you to have work experience. But right now, you're new. You're newly graduated, newly entering the job market. Even a couple of years into it, you're not going to have that much. And it's okay. It's okay even to repeat situations if that shows you showing the quality best. Because at this stage of your career, no one is expecting that you have that depth of experience. You don't have it. Okay, so yeah, you use whatever you have that shows you using the quality that you think they're looking for. That's the most important part. Okay, and I hear in interviews a lot. I hear people going, and they kind of apologize for it, which you shouldn't. They'll say, oh, I have to go back to that same example again. Don't worry about that. Just do it. Other questions? Okay, well, you guys probably won't have any problem getting jobs at all, right? Okay, I told you that preparation is absolutely critical in the interview process. It should start right now, and here's how you can start. I'm going to pass you out a piece of paper that you just send that back. Thank you. These are the things that you should be thinking about right now and making answers to. Writing out answers to this so that they're fixed in your memory. Using examples showing these things at work. Start now. And by the time you're actually doing interviews, that stuff will be incorporated into your memory. And you'll know it. And this is a self-reflective process. You answer these questions. You sit down and think about it. And this is not something you should do next week or over the next month. You should do this over the next 6 months while you're getting ready to graduate, if you're all seniors, or longer if you're not. But start figuring out right now, what are my personality strengths? What are the weaknesses? And by the way, be honest with yourself. This is just for you. If you're not honest with yourself, you're not helping yourself at all. What should somebody do? How do you answer a question where somebody asks you for something negative about yourself? The traditional question is, what's your biggest weakness? But it can be a lot of other things. I've heard questions structured like, tell me about the last time that you frustrated someone's expectations. Okay? Yeah.
Brad, you did have an opportunity to show how you became aware of something you were doing right, and then you took it as an opportunity to self-improvement and you adapted. It's no longer a problem. Maybe that.
Yeah, the basic concept here is you take the question, the weakness, they've asked you for a weakness. You don't say, oh, I'm a perfectionist, that's not a weakness. Don't say, oh, I work too hard, that's not a weakness. And they know that. They're asking you for a weakness. The best thing to do is to say, here's what I found to be a weakness in my personality or my work, my professionalism, whatever it is. And then you tell them, as you were suggesting, but here's what I've learned from that process, and here's how much improvement I've made, so that you take that negative information and you turn it into a positive. So no matter what you have to tell them, you can always turn that into a positive by saying simply, here's what I learned from it. Okay? All right, I want to leave you with one last thing, and 4 minutes is probably just long enough to really pound it into your brain, because this is the single most important question you'll get asked in an interview. And you get this question in almost any interview, only it comes in 100 different ways. The question is what we refer to as the sell yourself question. Towards the end of the interview, very often one of the very last questions, somebody is going to say to you, do you have anything else to add? It can be that simple, or it can be as complicated as, well, this is an entry-level position. We have a number of candidates. We really have an overabundance of candidates. We are interviewing a lot of people. You're one of them, so we have a certain amount of interest in you. But given that everybody wants this job, why are you the right candidate? Or it could be simple, and they could say, why should we hire you for this job? What do you bring to our company? That question, in however it comes, is your signal to tell them why you're the right person for the job, to sell yourself. And into that answer, you should be pulling the things that you had already thought were the most important qualities to them. To them. Put yourself in their seat and say, what are the qualities that they want to hear I have? And then you proceed to incorporate those qualities into your sell yourself answer. You should practice this answer. Do not memorize it. Practice saying it extemporaneously so that you can deliver it with confidence. But also so that you know you're going to get in that answer what you want to be in there, the things that you think are important. Practice it. You will get, almost certainly will get a chance to do that. This is it. Tell us why you're the person. And throughout the whole interview, you've been giving them answers, and they've been pulling out reasons why you might be the right person or the wrong person. This is the first time that you're really going to have the chance to say, here's why you should hire me, because I've got everything you're looking for, or what you think they're looking for. Okay, critical question, and I will be perfectly honest with you. A good answer can save a horrible interview, and a bad answer can sink a good interview. That's how important that answer is. Right? And the last thing is, anytime you go into an interview, you should always have 2 or 3 questions to ask them when they say to you, do you have any questions for us? Because nothing indicates disinterest more than, no, not really. Because I'm pretty sure you don't know everything about our company. And if you don't have any questions for me, then I guess you're really not that interested in the company. And the questions that you ask, make sure they're not questions you can find easily on their website, because that just indicates you haven't researched them. So you have to come up with questions that show that you're interested in the company, and you have to have the question. One of the questions that I very often suggest, are we running on here? Close. All right, one of the questions I very often suggest is, when there are openings in this company, do you have a tendency to promote from within before you look outside the organization? Well, this offers 2 things that an interview would find attractive. Number one, it tells you that your interest is in the company because you're already thinking about advancement. And what I don't want really to do is have to hire somebody for this job every 2 years. So that indicates to me this person is already thinking, 5 years from now, can I move up? 10 years from now? Nobody is going to expect you to be in this company for 30 years. Those days are gone. But everybody's hoping you're going to give them a 5 or 10-year commitment. They're putting a lot of money into you. They don't want to think you're using them as a stepping stone to get a little 2 years experience that all the job descriptions want. They don't want you to think that that's what they are on your way to what you really want to do. Okay, any last questions? Because I think we're out of time now. Okay, if you are interested ever in doing a mock interview, we offer mock interviews at the Oral Comm Lab. All you have to do is send an email to Speak Lab. in you. You just say, I'd like to arrange for a mock interview. We'll do it for you. I'll do it actually, because nobody else is trained in it. But I'm really nice. You tell them. No, see, don't believe her if she says that. Okay.
Thank you very much.